All right, you guys, I'm so excited for today. I found a birth mom and I'm super, super excited because she said yes to doing this opportunity with me. Her name is Michelle, and I've only known her for a few seconds, but she just seems like so awesome. And I can already I just love her personality already. So I'm super excited to hear her story. So I will go ahead and turn the time over to you, Michelle.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here. Gosh, yeah. I'm trying to think of where to begin. I guess, hey, I got pregnant when I was about 20. Oh gosh, how old was I? I think I was 21. Yeah, I was 21. In the summer, I had been kind of dating this guy on and off for like 6 months, and he was great. Like he was a good guy, but it was nothing that I wanted. We were just kind of messing around. There was no sense of like I'm in love with this person or any of that. It was just like I was young and So when I got pregnant, he and I talked about it, and he was like, "Listen, let's get married." And I'm like, "No way, I'm not marrying you." Not because of him, just because I was 21. And so I was like, "No." And for me, being pregnant was like the worst thing ever that could happen. And I say this a lot to people that I talk to who are like maybe facing an unplanned pregnancy. I'm like, "Look, this is not the worst thing ever. This is not. This is totally doable. And so let's just talk about it. And so anyway, yeah, he and I talked about it. We were like, "No, we're not going to get married." I was like, "Listen, I don't know what I'm going to do. I think I'm just going to get an abortion." It's totally against my moral code, by the way. I was not, never have been pro-abortion person. And so anyway, I grew up in a very strict church, all of this. So I was just like going out on a limb in crisis is what I want to say. And so I was trying to get myself to the abortion clinic, and there were just a couple of times where really God, I'm a believer, so God just stopped me like in my tracks in different ways. And I started to understand like this is a person inside of me and I've got to protect him. So I decided to carry the pregnancy to term, and I didn't know if I was going to parent or if I was going to, place him for adoption, but I knew I couldn't do abortion. So I went into a group maternity home. And at the time they called it a home for troubled women or something like. They would never call it that now, but this was like 1999. So back then they were like, "Oh, these troubled girls who got pregnant or whatever." And so it was a really like the best thing ever for me though. I was totally out of control, and when I went there was a lot of structure, which I hated, but I needed desperately. And so it was a Christian place too. So I had grown up in this like Southern Baptist, super like legalistic, strict church. And and then this place was more charismatic, like full on gospel. So it was like I was swinging the other way, like in a Christian sense. So I think God just brought all this like structure for me and opened my eyes to like the spectrum. And I kind of like hunkered down and started trying to figure out, okay, wait, who am I? Who is God? What does he say about me? Do I believe him? And so as my son was growing in my belly, God was growing in my heart, and I just really felt like I got to know him for who he really was. And so I was due March 8th, and on March 10th, I guess I went into labor March 9th in the night, and then March 10th, I'm at the hospital, and they start giving me Pitocin, and my my labor like stalls out, and I was like, I didn't even know that could happen. So I guess it was like mid-afternoon. My doctor came in and he's like, "Look, like my wife wants to be home by 5." And he was totally kidding, but I was like, "I'll see what I can do, buddy." Like he was trying to keep it like, he was really sweet. He delivered all the babies for this maternity home I was in. And so anyway, I delivered at 5:22. So I was close, 5:22. And he was 8 pounds and 14 ounces. And I just was like amazed. I was so amazed. I just couldn't get over this little creature, this little person. And I was instantly in love with him. And And I think that feeling of like being in love with him reaffirmed that I needed to do the right thing by him. So, I mean, I was like probably emotional. I had a pretty rough like upbringing. Not rough, but like my dad was not very nice. And so, and my mom was like over accommodating. She was a good mom. It just, so I kind of had the emotional maturity of like a 12-year-old, and I knew I had a lot of growing up to do. And I just thought it is such a disservice to this kid to bring him into one poverty. I mean, I had a high school diploma, but I mean, I had done a little bit of college, but like, you know, there was just like going to be poverty and struggle. And I just didn't want that for him. I wanted him to have like everything, and I wanted him to feel safe and secure. And I didn't even feel safe and secure. So how would he ever do that? So I, throughout the time at the maternity home, I was making an adoption plan the whole time. And I think one of the things that we talk about now, because I don't know if you know this, but I'm an adoption professional now. So I work with birth parents. So one of the things we talk about is like, hey, let's look at all of your options and why this one or that one is right for you. And hey, you know what? If you want a parent, you can do it. If you want a place, I'm going to help you do it well. Like all those kinds of things. No one was really encouraging me to look at parenting. Now they had us do like a budgeting class and that kind of stuff, but it wasn't. It was like all kind of like, we're going to show you how you're going to fail so that you know that giving this baby to a loving mother and father is the right thing to do. So I have some regrets about that. Now, listen, I do not regret placing my son for adoption. I regret getting pregnant before I was ready. I regret not being able to parent him, but I do not regret placing him for adoption. For me, it was the right decision. For him, it was the right decision, and he would say that too. So I set up this kind of semi-open adoption where like I would get updates about him for monthly for the first year, and then at 18 months and 2 years and 3 years, 4 years, 5 years. And then it was kind of like, okay, well then, you know, he's gonna be fine, and you'll kind of know he's on a good path. And then when he turns 18, he can find you. And so to me, that felt golden, like, oh, good, like he'll be able to find me if he wants to. But I had a lot of shame surrounding my circumstances, surrounding getting pregnant. I think I was embarrassed in front of him, if that makes sense. Even though he was not an adult at the time, I was ashamed that I couldn't care for him the way that I was supposed to. And so all of that shame kind of made me feel like I wasn't really worthy to be in his life. I wasn't going to be a good part of his life. He would never really want to know me. If he did, I would answer questions for him or whatever. But that really was better if I wasn't with him. He was with a loving mother and father and had older brothers, and you know, was set up, and I did the best thing, and I did the right thing, and there was a pat on the back, good job, go live your life, and you're gonna forget about it, you're gonna be fine. But surprise, I did not forget about the baby I had. And I feel like we've come leaps and bounds with that, but there was no encouragement for open adoption either. It was like, it's better off if he can just live apart from you. And kind of like, you know, I was going to be this kind of dirty little secret. And if I showed up, it wasn't going to be good for him. So fast forward 10 years, I'm married. I have a daughter with my husband. I have a son with my husband. And I'm like, you know what? I really want to write a book. And I didn't know what I was going to write about, but my husband's an artist, and he is like super supportive of me as a person. He's like, yeah, go do it, write a book. You should totally do that. So I'm like, okay. So as I began to think about what am I going to write, I wrote, and at this time, mind you, like I've gotten my updates till 5 years, and now it's 10 years later. So I haven't had updates in 5 years. I think, you know what, I'm going to write my story about getting pregnant and choosing to place my child for adoption, because I feel like there are not a lot of stories out there that are like, women aren't really talking about being birth parents. So this is like in 2010. So I take months, I start writing, and I finish it. I decide to self-publish it because I just think like there's no market really for, no one's really going to buy this book. I'm just going to do it for myself as a, hey, I wrote a book and it's a like a big accomplishment. And so on my son's 12th birthday, so this was March 10th of 2012, I threw myself a launch party and invited all my friends to a local bar, and they all came, and I did some readings, and it was like super fun. And by that point, I was kind of living more out loud. Like, yes, I'm a birth mom. You know, here are some reasons why you people choose to place your children for adoption. Here's an actual real story. I'm a functioning member of society. I am not and have never been a drug addict. Like all those stigmas that were surrounding birth parents were like lighting a fire under my tail. And I was like, no, it's not okay to make these gross assumptions about these women. And you know what? Even if I wasn't a drug addict, I'm still worthy of love and belonging, period. So I threw this little launch party, and I had a friend who was developing his web development business. And he's like, hey, you know, I'll do a site for you. So I'm like, okay, awesome. I might have paid him. I don't even remember, but it was like a friend of mine, you know. And so he developed my website, and I was like, yeah, this is cool and whatever. And then it was like people started coming out of the woodwork because, you know, I mean, I left it on, I published it through Amazon, or now it's Kindle publishing services or whatever it is. At the time, I think it was Create Space. And so people start coming out of the woodwork going, oh my gosh, I'm adopted. I have some questions. Oh my gosh, I placed a baby for adoption. I've never told anyone. I've never talked to a birth mother. Or I'm thinking about adoption. Can you talk me through this? And it was like kind of, I don't know if I was quite prepared for it. So one of the things that I did that I'm proud of is I really kept his information private. And because I just thought I've already given him away. I know that's not good adoption language, but this is my thinking at the time. I've already given him away. Why do I have to give more of it? Like, I don't want to give any more. I'm willing to tell my story and fight for birth parents to be seen as worthy of love and belonging, but I am not willing to give his information. So, you know, I changed his name in the book and all this, and there are a couple circumstances that were just slightly different or whatever, but I was like, people are going to get the point. And I thought no one's going to read it but my friends. But I guess that it's been out 10 years next month. And a lot of people have read it, and I went on from there to finish my degree. And I worked in adoption for the last 10 years. And so I worked with birth parents. And of course, I've spoken to countless people about, you know, who are hoping to adopt or who had adopted or who were adopted. And so just kind of like getting my voice out there on behalf of birth parents. I wrote a couple of journals for birth moms. They're just like these open kind of prompts where they can respond if they want to or not or whatever. And then I wrote a book for adoptive parent, kind of aimed at adoptive parents, like, hey, there's a lifelong connection between adoptees and their birth parents, and it's important. And here's how you can foster a good, healthy environment for that to help your child do this in a good, healthy way. And then we moved to China. My husband and our two kids and I moved to China. And again, still no contact with my son. I sometimes would talk to his mother because I found her when I first got into the workforce adoption wise. I found her and her husband. I sent them this message just saying, hey, I will never overstep my boundaries. I know that he's a minor. I just want you to know, like, if he ever wants to reach out, I want to have a relationship with him. So they're like, yeah, he's in middle school. You know, you're kind of the weird part of his life. And I was like, cool. Like, I respect that because I chose you all to love him and advocate for him. Even if that's hard, I am big enough to hear that, grieve that, and still respect his decision. So, and that's something that, this is why post-placement care is so important. we need to be able to do this for our children and for our, the whole situation. So anyway, we moved to China. I'm in China. I'm living my best life, whatever, you know. My husband's working at an international school, and I'm working at an adoption agency serving expats. I'm the home study specialist over Asia. So I travel around mainly in China, and I serve expats who either are hoping to adopt, like writing home studies, or expats who have adopted, doing like post-adoption reports and that kind of stuff, just depending on, you know, the country that they adopted from and all this stuff, and offering, you know, just some information. I was also the boots on the ground for people coming to China. If they got over to China and something went haywire, I was already there. So it was super easy for me to get to them compared to someone in the States, right? And so that taught me, working in international adoption taught me so much about adoptees. Suddenly I was like listening to adoptees. Suddenly I was going, oh my gosh, I've never even thought of that before. I didn't realize that could be hurtful. I didn't realize that could be helpful. Like all of these things. So I start following adoptees on adult adoptees on, you know, Instagram and Twitter and stuff, and just listening to what they had to say. And it was such an education for me, and it really set me up for success when my son reached out to me on July 2nd of 2019. I was still living in China. I was finishing up my run on my treadmill, and I, you know, look at my phone and I'm like, oh my, I see his name and I'm like, oh my gosh. I had been longing for him to have a relationship with me, to want to talk to me. And I had no idea what he was going to say either. So I was like petrified of what is he going to say? Is he going to be like, no, I just want to tell you to your face, I hate you. You know what I mean? I had no idea what he was going to say. And so anyway, I emailed him right back. Like, he said, look, I was really angry with you. I've done a lot of forgiveness. I worked through some forgiveness, and I really think that God wants you to be a part of my life. I want you to be a part of my life if you're, you know, if you're up for that. And I'm like, yeah, I'm up for it. And one of the cool things about my little family, with my husband being so supportive, he was also like, my kids that I was parenting knew about Eric. They knew everything about him, right? And we celebrated his birthday every year and all that stuff. So when they heard that their brother had messaged and reached out and was gonna maybe be part of our lives, like, they were like so pumped. So they were like, oh, that's so cool, we're gonna get to meet him, because of course I've seen pictures and, you know, all this stuff. And so yeah, the next day we had a hour and a half Zoom call, because I'm in China. And I was like, it was just the most amazing thing. And I was able to say some hard things to him. He was able to say some hard things to me. I was able to say, I'm sorry. And he's like, look, you don't have to be sorry. I've had a great life. And I'm like, yeah, I know, but like, I can still be sorry that I couldn't parent you or didn't parent you or whatever, you know? And so it started off really well. And it was kind of like, he was like, hey, why don't we just follow each other on Instagram? I'm like, okay, that's a 19-year-old man's like love language, is follow me on Instagram, maybe. I don't know. I took it as I was very excited about that he invited me to do that. So we started following each other, and, you know, it took a while for him to come around to be able to like say, hey, I love you. And I still don't know what he calls me to other people, and I would love to know, but I'm too chicken to ask him. But you know, I feel like it's just been this kind of like huge miracle to where we have a fully open reunion. As you would expect, we got evacuated from China, right? So we come back to the States, and in May of 2020, we're in the same state in the United States, because his parents had brought him home from college. And so he's like, hey, I want to come see you this weekend. And I'm like, oh, okay. And I'm like freaking out. I'm freaking out. And I'm like, I'm going to need a glass of scotch. I don't drink scotch. I just was like, I need something to like settle my nerves. So like the night before. And so anyway, the next day he texts, he's like, hey, I'm on my way. he gets there right when he said he was going to get there, and I walk out. I was like, hey, I gotta walk out by myself. I walk out by myself to hug him, and it was like my heart was next to his heart for the first time in 2 decades, and it was just such it was such an honor to be able to hold him again, and I feel like it's something that like had been latent in me, because when I placed him for adoption, I used to just there was just this like ache to hold him, and it's almost like it kind of laid latent until 2 decades later, when I had the privilege of doing that again. So we had a good weekend. We had fun. I mean, he was with the whole family. They had fun, and since then we've been able to see each other regularly. I was able to go to. He's a soccer player in college. I was able to go see him play a couple times, like a couple of his games this past season, and he's really the coolest thing. Like I love who he is. Like he's such a tender-hearted person who but he's strong too, and so I don't know, it's just been. He said to me at Christmas this year, he goes, he was like, I've heard a lot of horror stories about like reunion and adoption, and he was like, I don't think this could be any better. And I was like, yeah, me neither. And I'm like, that's like, it was like the biggest compliment he could have given me, so yeah, that is my story.
No, it's beautiful. And you probably saw me tearing up as you started to tear up, because so I mean, I know you don't know a lot about me, but I'm an international adoptee, and I found my bio family it's been almost 5 years. This year it'll be 5 years. And it's crazy to me, because you talking about like a piece of your heart, like when you guys touched, I know, because I want to go visit and meet my bio mom in person, because my sole mission to finding her was just to tell her thank you, because I don't think I would have had any of the opportunity or any of I wouldn't have my kids, my husband, the life I have, anything like that, if it wasn't for her. And so I know when I meet her and hug her, that's why I started to tear up when you were talking about it, because I'm probably gonna stay in ball for 10 minutes, because it's just gonna be this, this piece of me and this piece of her that has been wanting to be reunited for, because that's the thing is I've talked about that, is this woman carried me for 9 months, and we bonded for 9 months, and just because I was placed for adoption doesn't mean that bond just poof goes away. You know what I mean?
No.
Yeah. And so, and I love how you said giving up isn't the right lingo, but for me being an adoptee, it took me years to finally learn that it's more proper to say placed than given up. So, I mean, it's just a learning curve for everybody. And I love that. And I love that you help birth moms, because my ultimate dream is to open some form of an adoption agency and help all parts of the triad, because I've met people who birth moms, they want, they need the help just as much. It's you were saying, there wasn't any resources for you, and it's hard when you grow up. So I'm in a faith too. My faith's different, but it's hard when it's strict. And when something like that happens, and then you're already feeling like crap because of something, and people are already looking at you like, ew. And so to have support, somebody like you, I think that's amazing. And I love that you and him were able to have open, honest conversations, and just, it sounds like you can both just you're just growing and healing from it, because that everything's not easy peasy. So, and I love that you have books. I'm gonna have to check them out. I don't think I even knew that. And I love, do you do the t-shirts that you posted a while ago? I love the ones you posted, my heart is here and here. And you did wasn't that you that posted them with the different countries?
Oh,
yes.
Yep, that is me.
And I loved those. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I need to get one that says Colombia, because that's where I'm from.
Yeah.
So
I was going to say, I've only done China. And that was just a personal project, because I think when I left China personally, I some of my heart is still back there. I can't imagine what it's like for an adoptee. I mean, I just lived there for 4 years. You know what I mean? Just,
So yeah, I don't know really any different, because I was 2 weeks old when my mom flew down to Colombia to grab me, but still it's, my whole story is crazy. I'll have to call you sometime and tell you all about it, but this is about
I love it.
But no, I love because there's so many birth moms I've just met recently that are more like my age, that they're starting to speak out more. And I love the movement that they have, because like even me speaking out as an adoptee and I have a positive story, it's hard because those adoptees that are very disgruntled with their adoptions, they attack me for things like, well, you shouldn't be grateful and this is stupid. And all I can do is pray for them, because I'm like, I'm so sorry, your story's so hurtful. But and so it's scary. It's scary. I get it. It's trying to share some of your heart. It's really, really scary. But I appreciate you doing that. And I love that you want to know what he calls you, but you're like, it just makes you too nervous too. I love that. I think that's so cute, because it just kills me. But and I love that. I don't know. I love that you kept it open with your kids, because I know, like, for instance, I'll share part of my story, which anybody that follows me know. There's 7 kids in my birth family. I'm smack dab in the middle, and I was kept a secret. So like when I met them, they're all like, what? Like, what? Yeah. And so I love that you kept it open. And now that I know her reasons, I understand why she did what she did. And I have compassion towards her for that. But like, I love that they were so excited when he wanted to meet you guys. Like, it's just, and I just love that. And I do want to ask, because this is something I do like asking bio moms, is how did your spouse feel about it? Like, how did you tell him like that you had? Yeah, that's one thing. Yeah. If you share that.
So yeah, sure. So I met Matthew at church. I'd moved to, obviously, out of the maternity home into a new state, into a new city. And I met him. He held the door for me at church. And so anyway, we had mutual friends, and one of my roommates I was in a house with 3 girls, and one of them was really good friends with him, and she had a physical handicap. And so he came over and like painted her room for her. And so we ended up just like hanging out, and he was nothing like I thought I would end up with. I mean, I'm a huge sports fan, and he's a total artist. And I just was like, oh, this guy's cool. And then I was like, he's really cool. And then suddenly he starts calling for me instead of her. Anyway, so pretty early on, I think there was, I had a picture of him up. I had a picture of Eric up, and he's like, oh yeah, who's this? And I was like, oh, that's my son, Eric. And he was like, well, where is he? And so then I was like, well, I placed him for adoption. And he was like, oh, okay. Come to find out, his parents had taken in girls in crisis pregnancy who were like just parenting or play, like they'd just been at home. So he kind of like understood that. And then he had some things attached to his own personal story that I won't share, but like that he connected with me over this. And he was never ashamed. There was just this moment where he was like, so I just want to be clear, like I can't, like, I know you're his mother, but I'm not his father. I'm like, yep, we're good. And that was really the only, I think he just had to make sure that I understood. And other than that, he has just been 100% like supportive and loves this kid, and just as much as I do. You know what I mean? Well, maybe not just as much, but a lot.
No, I love that. And I love that he is so incredibly supportive. I am very blessed, and I have a husband that's just like that as well. And it just makes everything just like, and I love that. I love that he was just open to it. Yeah. And that you guys were able to like connect and be good and all those sorts of things. I love that.
When I had our daughter, so she's our oldest, I bring her home, and she's in her crib asleep, and I'm looking at him, and I'm like, how am I ever going to tell her about Eric? Like, I don't even know how to do that. And he's like, go tell her right now. And I was like, what? He's like, yeah, just go in there and tell her. And so at his prompting, I went in there and I held my infant daughter and told her the entire story, and was like sobbing. Of course, she has no idea. And so I started practicing from the get-go, because I thought it's really unfair of me to say to his parents, to Eric's parents, I want him to know he's adopted, and then for me to hide him. I felt like that was an injustice, like that was not right, And so because I had practiced sharing my story, and we celebrated his birthdays and all that kind of stuff, he's as much my kid's brother, like he's as much theirs as he is mine. Like they are possessive of him, like he is important to them, and he'll call them on their birthdays, and it's the best thing ever. It's just like, so yeah, I remember one time my son went to school saying, oh yeah, it was my daughter. She was like, my adopted brother and they were like, hey, Cadence was saying she had an adopted brother. So like, just she kind of got in trouble for lying. We tried to tell her like her brother's not adopted. Deacon is yours. No, that's my youngest son. And I was like, well, she does have an adopted brother. His name's Eric, and he lives with his parents that I placed him with. And they were like, oh. And I guess they had not too many people come across that level of like openness. So, it was a learning curve for them. It was fine. Because most birth families, I don't know, like I guess aren't saying my adopted brother, but that is what he is. He just doesn't live with us. He's adopted into another family. Yeah.
No,
So
I think that's great. And I love that you're just honest about it. You're like, well,
yeah.
actually, she's right. Like, I love that. I think honesty is probably like one of the best ways to get people to actually listen. So they're
Yes.
like, oh, okay. Um, so for like birth moms that are maybe, I don't know, scared or anything, or just maybe feeling alone like you did, what advice would you give to birth moms like that?
Oh, my biggest advice is always to like find somebody, find a group, find another birth mom, talk to an adoption informed therapist, not just a therapist, an adoption informed therapist. um like you're absolutely not alone, and it's so scary to go talk to other birth moms for the first time, but every time, I've seen it happen a million times. They'll come into group, because I run a post placement support group. They'll come into group and they'll be so nervous, and suddenly they're like, wait, you all feel that way? Wait, like, and they're able to like own their child completely without any explanation. You know what I mean? It's like, oh my gosh, it's such a relief to be able to like 100% live in your story. And so I think, um I guess that would be my biggest advice, is like find a group. On Your Feet Foundation, they have tons of groups, for birth mothers and fathers, and Brave Love, I love Brave Love. They have lists on their website. You can go and find one near you, and some virtual ones. So the other thing, which I was doing the t-shirts for, is we're going to do an annual retreat. The Birth Mom Collective, my friend Betty and I are going to do an annual retreat, and it's going to be in Charlotte in May. So if you want information about that, anyone can email me, or email the Birth Mom Collective at gmail.com. It's a free retreat. You have to pay for like your travel and like your hotel stay if you stay in a hotel. But it's going to be a free retreat for birth moms, and we're pretty pumped about it.
Oh my gosh, I love that. I like absolutely love that. And there's a couple birth moms I've interviewed that like, yeah, no, and I can, because they want community, like the birth moms that I've interviewed
Yes.
too. So I'll have to shoot some of them your way, because they're just amazing ladies, and they're just on their way to like be powerful and amazing like you. Like, I just love it. I love it. I love it. I love it. So any other advice that you would have for like anybody?
Yes, I would say for adoptees, I think most birth moms that I know and have worked with, are pretty much just insecure girls wanting to be loved, right? So um, I think it's such a privilege to share our children's lives. And so any little tidbit is like, we love it. So even if you're an adoptive parent, you're thinking, is this going to upset her? I hear that all the time. And I'm like, no, like the more information, the better. And hopefully she is able to tuck it away if she can't look at it right now, and look at it when she can. But I think the more information, the better. So, and I like with Eric, I'm like, hey, like, tell me about this. Like, I'm constantly trying to pull information out of him, because I want to know him and know about his life. So yeah, I think I'm with you. Honesty is the best policy, and the more openness, the better.
And I love that. And I feel like a shift, especially from my generation of adoptees, is super
Mm,
closed. But I feel like now most people that I know that are adopting, they are doing everything in their power to keep it
mhm.
open, which I think is beautiful, because I've
Yeah,
seen so many of them been able to function. I know with international, it's a lot harder to keep it open.
it is.
Like, you can, but unfortunately you don't get that closeness and that parameters like some of, these parents that live in the same state or even a couple states away.
Yeah,
You know what I mean? Like, so
yeah,
I think it's beautiful, because that's something that I'm like, oh, that would have been so cool growing up to like kind of know,
yeah.
or but I get it. She chose to keep it closed, and and it's fine. Like it all works out in the end, which is great. So, and
Yeah.
I'm very grateful for that. But so I love it. And I will tag you when I post this video, and everybody can go check out your amazing resources. And I just love what you do. I think it's so wonderful. Like I love it so much when
Thank
there's
you.
because every single part of the triad needs it. And so I
Yeah.
absolutely just makes my heart so happy that
Yeah. I will put a shameless plug if we have time.
yeah.
So I write a lot of books. I have a fiction book deal with a small publishing house, and they were just some passion books that I started writing. Anyway, I have a book coming out on April 25th called Both Cleaving and Cleaving. And it is about a birth mom who falls in love with an adult adoptee. And it's about family, it's about adoption, it's about family permanency, family preservation. Like there's a lot in there. And my beta readers who are all in the triad, I have lots of positive reviews. So I'm hoping, I think it's the most important adoption book I've written, because it's a fictional story where you can start to understand the birth parents' perspective, the life we live, and how we live with this choice. And so anyway, shameless plug.
No, plug it away. I'm excited for that. When it starts coming out, I'll start sharing it to my stories so you can get more
I
views on it.
love
Yes.
that. Thank you.
Yes, no, I
I will
totally will.
definitely let you know.
No, I love that. And seriously, thank you, Michelle, for taking some time out of your Sunday to come sit down and chat with me.
Yeah,
I love it. It's like seriously my favorite because every time I do an interview, I always learn something new. I feel like I can't ever
yeah,
learn, and then I always do. And it's like my favorite. No, it really is just like my favorite
yeah,
thing in the world because I
yeah.
just love it. I love it so much. So seriously, thank you for your time today. And I so
Thank you for
appreciate
having
it.
me.